Okay, let's get it started. And ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and good morning. Welcome to join the first webinar of Connecting Green Hydrogen APAC and produced by the Leader Associates. My name is Brittany, conference producer of Leader Associates. And I will host this webinar for all our dear guest speakers and audience to walk through about 1 hour live talking about hydrogen to unlock the potential of green hydrogen in APAC region with our eyes on the infrastructure developers, technology producers, and utility owners. Firstly, please allow me to introduce our speakers and the topics today. Let me show my screen now. Okay, this is our today's speakers and their topics. Um, the first topic will focus on the green hydrogen project and green ammonia. It will be presented by the H2U, the Hydrogen Utilities Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Attilio Pigneri. H2U is full of the experience to develop green hydrogen projects in South Australia. And recently, we have started the they have started the collaboration with Mitsubishi Heavy Industry on green hydrogen and green ammonia. And our second topic is clean hydrogen energy supply chain between Australia and Japan. And it will be presented by the J-Power's director, Jeremy Stone. The hydrogen energy supply chain is a world first pilot project to safely and efficiently produce and transport clean hydrogen from Victoria's Latrobe Valley to Japan. It's under the collaboration by a variety of the energy sectors like mining, transportation, export, and liquefaction. And the last one, we will focus on the renewable hydrogen application into the utility sector like Australia Gas Infrastructure Group, AGIG. AGIG's, and it will be presented by the AGIG's lead advisor, low carbon transformation, Vikram Singh. AGIG is playing a leading role in renewable energy supply and energy transition in Australia. Decarbonization and in utility sector. Recently, AGIG's first hydrogen hub in South Australia is near completion of construction. And after the introduction of our speakers and topics, and I will introduce every speaker, every audience, delegates, how to enjoy this process. And every speaker will use about 5 minutes for presentation and use 5 minutes for Q&A session. And in Q&A session, if you like to ask some question to the certain speaker, please write down to the Q&A box, at the bottom of the display. And I will turn the question to the speaker one by one. And if you got some technical issues like voice and unclear and displays some issues, please mention it under the chat box, and we will support you. And this webinar's recording will be released next Monday for you to review the intelligence. Okay, before the start, I'd like to briefly introduce who we are, the Leader Associates. Leader Associates is global leading event organizer concentrating on renewable energy. And we have hosted more than 25 events across the Asia Pacific, South America, Africa, and Europe. And nowadays, we are honored to have a network of over 80,000 industry professionals covering the wind, solar, energy storage, and green hydrogen. And now we are here. Really hope you will have a charity time to enjoy our first hydrogen webinar. Okay, now let's get started with our first topic, H2U's perspective on green hydrogen and green ammonia, the pathway to green hydrogen and green ammonia, and presented by the Dr. Attilio Pigneri, the CEO of the hydrogen utility, H2U. Hi, Attilio.
Hi, how are you?
Get started. Yes.
Thank you. Can you see my presentation? Just wanted to confirm.
Okay, I start showing my screen. And wait a minute.
Can you? I did share my screen. Can you? I was trying to share my screen. I've got the presentation ready to go. Okay.
Yes, okay. You can start your showing.
Can you see it now?
Yes, I can see it. Perfect.
Okay. Thanks, Bryce. Thanks for having us, and thanks to the other presenters and all the attendees. We've been invited to talk about green hydrogen and green ammonia projects and the pathway to commercialization. Obviously, we're focused on the Asia Pacific. So let me introduce our company, discuss how we see the market outlook for this type of projects and why green hydrogen and ammonia, and then just give you a glimpse of our project portfolio. So HTU is young business, although we've been trading under the HTU name since late 2015. We are growing, but we extremely focus on delivering industrial scale green hydrogen projects, and we are a pure play developer. But our business model is a build, own, and operate. So we are developing a portfolio and projects more in the public domain, Air Peninsula Gateway in South Australia, which is an evolution of our Port Lincoln development, and then a project we announced earlier in the year in glass. Recently, one was in November. Mitsubishi Industries is now a strategic investor into H2U, our group, but also a technology partner when it comes to key components and really enable us to scale up our infrastructure development activities, particularly around the hydrogen compression, gas turbines, and but also more broadly in terms of energy management and digital integration tools. Just quickly talking about the market outlook, I guess the context in which we're all talking about green hydrogen is the falling cost of renewables. We're now in a situation where large-scale wind and large-scale solar PV, the cheapest form of new capacity generation, a new generation capacity addition. There's quite a lot of movement, I believe, is one of the topics that connecting green hydrogen and Asia Pacific is quite interesting, on offshore wind as well. But really the interesting thing is the downward trend in the cost of renewables and how that cheap renewable power could be harnessed to also open up to new industries, particularly hydrogen. In that context, we're also seeing the electrolyzer industry scaling up to really meet the requirements of this market or and address the market opportunity, and really seeing sorry, just mute my phone. What we're really seeing is a very large increase production capacity in the market. But this is not unlike what happened with the solar PV industry about 15 years ago. So technology was already available, but the industrialization, the mass deployment really started 15 years ago. And from about 1 gigawatt of production capacity in the solar PV industry, we actually witnessed 110 gigawatts of the sea after we actually worked on more production capacity at the moment, but there's already a lot of plants that will take us beyond the 50 gigawatts by 2030. But really hard storage, but also industrial feedstocks, mining application, and then industrial feedstocks such as methanol or ammonia. But also there is a longer term trajectory around exporting hydrogen in one form or another market overseas. I believe that Jeremy will talk about that as well, but also for the shipping market. Now we really focus on this opportunity around green hydrogen ammonia because it's of the domestic uses and opportunities, is the only one that really warrants the opportunity to work at the scale capacity that would be required. Yep.
Sorry, Dr. Attilio, and I have to pardon, and some audience reflect that there was a banner have the word tab and hold to use the laser pointer in the screen. Okay, and
I can see. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Carry on.
It's the iPad. Look, really, there's an opportunity to, in different economies, to actually look at the ammonia market as an early stage market that allows to build at a scale which is comparable to the export market, because we've been talking about the electrolyzer as a supply chain which is scaling up to meet the requirement of the hydrogen market. But really the enabler is not the electrolyzers, is the balance of plant capabilities and compression, is the supply chain capabilities in terms of delivery, and also towards an export market and export terminal. This is really the if you're on the quantum leap, that really will enable this type of industrial scale applications for green hydrogen. So with that in mind, we really focus on developing a very large portfolio of projects. As I said, 2 are public domain, but we also have other one in Tasmania and in New Zealand. They're all giga scale projects. I think one characteristic of our projects, they're actually all grid connected. So we're actually looking for strategic locations in the grid, as well as port accessible locations for the export market, because we really see a unique opportunity to introduce these new large scale power loads to really support the development of hydrogen on one side, but really to help manage intermittent renewable dominated grid in the future. We also made some advancements about, in particular, our Air Peninsula project, which we announced at the beginning of November, together with the Premier in South Australia, into having changed location to have access to a port facility, and the fact that the development still has a demonstrator stage, which is about 75 megawatt now, but then will be developed as a gigawatt class project over time. And we're effectively, we have awarded, but we will announce early in the new year the front-end engineering design. And this is quite a unique situation, because in the space of green ammonia, our project is the first one globally to mark that milestone. So it really will be the basis for developing this platform. Really aiming to be breaking ground on the site towards the last quarter of 2021, and then commencing the operational commissioning by the end of 2022. That concludes my presentation, Bryce. This is my contact details. I hope to take any of the questions.
Thank you, Dr. Attilio. And actually, we got some questions for you, and let me check. And please allow me to share my screen now.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes, thank you. And here's the questions we prepared for you. And the first one is, what is the projected levelized the cost of the green hydrogen per kilogram over the next 5 and 10 years?
I guess there's a range of prices. There's not a single price. It really depends on the scale of the project. There's some arrangements around the procurement of the renewables. But it's fair to say that large scale projects are currently looking at if you want to range between $3 per kilogram Australian and $5.5 per kilogram Australian. Larger, smaller scale project might be more in the 7 to 9. We believe reasonably with some improvements on the economies of scale and the technology, but really improvements in relation to renewables, that the goal of achieving a kilogram or even slightly below that.
Okay, and the second is how we will assess hydrogen projects value at this time.
Sorry, can you please repeat?
The second is how we will assess the hydrogen project's value at this time. How to assess the value of the hydrogen?
The validity of a hydrogen projects. Look, I think is anything there is, there's a declining cost trajectory, but I think there are specific market opportunities that might be satisfied with a higher price point on account of different factors, where there's some advantage in relation to logistics, some policy mechanisms that create some incentives, or some, if you're strategic positioning where there is a significant loss leader opportunity in securing the location and the site. And then, while there might be a loss in the early deployment of plant, is the expansion of the projects might really deliver a strategic competitive advantage over time.
Oh, thank you. And the third question is, what would be the feasible ways to reduce the cost of the green hydrogen?
Look, there's really two elements there. One is capital, but more than capital is actually capital utilization. So having scale to deliver some capital efficiency. The other one is finding ways, either by finding the right projects or finding the right contractual mechanism to secure a very low power price, if we're considering obviously hydrogen from renewable electricity, or there's other sources but might not be as available, for example, biogas, reforming, or others. But really, there's a trade-off between how cheap the power can be had, for example, spilt energy, and the fixed cost. So really, the balance between low enough price of electricity but a high enough utilization of the assets is vital. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. And the fourth is how do we bridge the production sites, to the markets, from the production to the commercial, or which medium of the transport will be preferred?
Again, we believe like there's not a single price point that needs to be achieved in order to deliver to every market. There's not a single advantages and disadvantages. Speaking of ammonia, there are advantages in delivering to bulk customers, but disadvantages to delivering that to inner cities. And so we need to have some intermediate value chain activities. So liquid hydrogen, in that regard, has got the benefit of all the processing required happens on the production side, which if it is an export place, its natural electricity is low, and therefore the cost of liquefaction is not that significant. But then that product can go all the way to a refueling station without any further conversion or transformation. And there's other concepts around MCH that require processing both ends, much like ammonia. If you considering delivering hydrogen. But I think where ammonia also has got an interesting market opportunity is the fact that there are some customers that are really interested in the green ammonia itself, both in power generation application, for example, with the Green Ammonia Consortium and the value chain partners there are developing in Japan, but the shipping sector is now looking at green ammonia as a substitute to very low sulfur fuel oil in the near near to medium term. These methods very similar.
Okay, sure. And the last one we prepare for you is, you know, the more and more people interest in the green hydrogen and green ammonia, you know, and what do you think of the demand side shaping in some areas, especially the Southeast Asia?
So can you please repeat?
You know, more and more people have the growing their interest in green hydrogen and green ammonia. And what do you think? What do you think of the demand side in some special market, especially in Southeast Asia?
As I was saying before, I think Southeast Asia is going to be a very interesting springboard for the market to develop. We're seeing 3 key economies leading the charge and wanting to integrate hydrogen, green hydrogen, or hydrogen, Korea and Singapore. Great thing about that is that across 3 economies, we all can identify market focuses. So Korea, that's very much very early focus on mobility and providing connectivity for zero emission mobility across the state of the country. In Japan, there's a lot of work on mobility, but there's increasingly a lot of focus on large scale power generation. And then when it comes to Singapore, I think there's an interest in many applications, but also there's an interest to leverage the existing critical role of Singapore as a hub for shipping fuels to then provide for ammonia or other solutions for zero emission shipping fuels. And so fair to say that this China could play a very big role both as a producer and as a user of green hydrogen, because it's got the ability to deploy large-scale renewables. And then you got a number of potential producers, obviously Australia, New Zealand, but also Indonesia, Malaysia, Borneo. So you can see a very diversified and very resilient regional market opening up for green hydrogen, and one that probably is going to break the path for how the industry will develop.
Okay, sure. And we'll add a question from from the Q&A box below the screen, and you can find it. Maybe I think the Richard Yu's question. Can you answer? And can you answer it for him? He said, Attilio, do you foresee the needs of the for ammonia cracking at the destination use countries? What problem or challenges with ammonia cracking and purification for hydrogen users?
Well, I think in terms of the so ammonia cracking at small use location, for example, refueling stations, there's a lot of work. Some mechanisms have been developed and commercialized in partnership with FMG. There is some work happening in Korea and in Japan on similar solutions. I think The challenge is obviously the capital efficiency at this lower scale, but we would think that there's actually a challenge which is even bigger, which is that of ammonia logistics in densely populated areas. So the challenge is not really purification or technical, but it's about having the systems, but also having the right planning parameters to be able to deliver, you know, a toxic and explosive material right in the middle of very densely dense. That's where we believe liquid hydrogen's got a significant advantage. But also in locations where green ammonia might be developed to delivered to large-scale users, for example, in the power generation sector, I think you can see the potential for part of that ammonia to be then processed into pure hydrogen to be delivered to the local markets beyond that import side, or in the future, there's some work happening to crack that ammonia to provide hydrogen to gas turbines. So definitely something is happening. Technically, is not really a particular challenge. I think is the economics, the logistics, and the planning in the different applications will determine whether it's a viable method or not.
Okay, thank you, and thank you, Dr. Attilio. And you can see, due to the time we have to carry on, but you can see there's more and more questions coming from the Q&A session. And if you would like to answer some of them, and you could, you may talk them through this box or the chat box with them, and very thankful, very thank you to your valuable speech about the green hydrogen and the green ammonia, and thank you so much. And so now we will welcome our second speaker, the Jeremy Stone, as the director of the J-Power, to start the second presentation about the clean hydrogen production and export hydrogen energy supply chain.
Yeah, thank you, Bryce. If you could just let me share my screen. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, is that okay? Well, thank you very much. For those who aren't aware, J-Power is a large utility company in Japan, about 25 gigawatts of total generation capacity. And in Japan, we're about 50% renewable. And we continue to invest in a range of clean energy projects around the world, whether that be hydro, biomass, wind, solar, and of course, clean hydrogen, which is the topic of today. So we are part of a consortium putting forward a world's first liquid hydrogen supply chain project. It's about $500 million, and it's located in Victoria, in Australia. So in terms of how did we get here? I mean, how did it start? So way back about 7 or 8 years ago, there was the Fukushima accident in Japan. I'm just getting a bit of feedback, so if people could put their Attilio, if you could put yours on mute, please.
Hi, Dr. Attilio, and will you mute your a microphone now?
Yeah, it's better. Bryce, okay, thanks. So there was the Fukushima accident in 2012. At that point, Japan, to reach its clean and affordable energy targets, was going to invest more in nuclear. Well, given that accident at Fukushima, there had to be a bit of a rethink. So they started to head towards hydrogen as their clean source of energy. And given the fact that they import about 95%, 94% of their energy needs through fossil fuels, they needed something which was clean, reliable, and affordable. And hydrogen was it. Had very strong relationships with Australia, and there was existing gasification of coal technology and carbon capture and storage. Hence the aim and starting to build up the project in Australia. Now, since that time, there's been many other countries who have now headed towards a hydrogen future. There's about 22 countries with hydrogen strategies, Australia being one of them. That was released a bit over 12 months ago. It's technology agnostic in terms of how hydrogen is produced. So it can either be with fossil fuel, with carbon capture and storage, or it can be renewable, as Attilio was talking about before, the green hydrogen. And more recently, there's Australia's low emissions technology statement was released, and there were 5 key focus areas for technology development, one being clean hydrogen and the other being carbon capture and storage. So 2 elements which are very much connected with our project, and they set the stretch target of clean hydrogen at $2 per kilo. In a snapshot, our project, as I mentioned, it's a supply chain. It's not to prove up the production of hydrogen through gasification of coal. It's to prove up the complete supply chain. So starting from the left, we have the hydrogen gasification and refining facility, or the coal gasification and refining facility. We then, for the pilot stage, will truck that gaseous hydrogen to the port of Hastings, where that gaseous hydrogen is liquefied. Gets taken to minus 253 degrees centigrade. It gets then loaded onto a world's first liquid hydrogen ship, and then taken to the port of Kobe in Japan, where that is offloaded there. So complete supply chain, and I'll now run through the location of where those elements are, then the people involved and the status of those various elements. So for those who aren't familiar about where this all is in Victoria, so Victoria is the southern state of Australia. So we are gasifying at the AGL Loy Yang site at the Latrobe Valley. We will then truck it westwards to the port of Hastings to an existing port, where that will be, as I mentioned, shipped out. We have a large number of people involved. It's an expensive project. It's $500 million Australian dollars. So we've got a number of private organisations, which you can see on the screen there. It's ourselves from J-Power, but there's Kawasaki Heavy Industries, there's Marubeni, Sumitomo, Iwatani and AGL from Australia. But we also have the financial support of the Victorian government, the Australian government and the Japanese government. So quite a number of organisations. We all seem to get on pretty well, which is good. And we're progressing at great speed. Probably there's 2 main questions which we get asked, but I'll ask and respond to the first one here, and I'll respond to the second one in my very last slide. Is we get asked, well, if you can produce clean hydrogen from renewables, why would you produce it from Latrobe Valley coal? And we say there's 3 main answers. One is urgency, the other is scale, and the other is affordability or sustainability. So in terms of urgency, we have incredible climate change challenge in front of us. If you're aiming for net zero by 2050, we have to do a tremendous number of things all at the same time. And we generally agree of where we're trying to get to, but most governments realise they need to undertake a number of different activities at the same time. So this project, with existing technology and known technology, can actually save about 1.8 million tonnes of CO2 per year. So that's equivalent of about taking off 350,000 internal combustion cars off the road. So that's what we could save per year if this project was in commercial phase. In terms of scale, this is a very scalable project. The footprint for the gasification and refining is very small. There's an abundance of affordable coal. So we can scale up very quickly, and that scale up enables infrastructure and skills and training to be built up quickly, which can equally be applied to renewable hydrogen as well. So for example, our hydrogen pipelines, our liquefaction, our ships, and those sorts of elements of the infrastructure can be applied for any form of hydrogen production. On the right-hand side, this is really about affordability. At the end of the day, right now, most research indicates that hydrogen from a fossil fuel with carbon capture and storage is about a third or half to a third the price of green hydrogen. Despite the fact that green hydrogen is reducing, and we hope it gets reduced, we support all hydrogen projects. Again, we feel that at the end of the day, we need off-takers prepared to pay the price for clean hydrogen. So we believe there is a role going forward for an affordable and reliable and scalable supply of hydrogen. There is also an opportunity with our form of production that some of our byproducts like CO2 and even the excess nitrogen can be used for other forms of production such as ammonia, urea, building products, methanol. So there is the opportunity for a circular economy in Gippsland, where this project is, to enable the startup of other industries as well. In terms of the status, so here we are at Latrobe Valley. This is the gasification and refining facility. It's been built, it's been finished. We're in the commissioning stage at the moment, hoping to start up operations very soon. About 150 jobs were created, and we continue our ongoing engagement with the local community. We have webinars, and when we're allowed to, we'll go back to our face-to-face meetings as well. So in general, the community is supportive of clean energy. They also know that their existing coal-fired power stations will soon be shutting down and transitioning out. So they see this as a nice way to move into some cleaner industries. At the Port of Hastings, again, this storage facility and liquefaction facility has been built. It's undergoing commissioning, and as per the gasification site, hopefully under operations very, very soon. About 60 jobs were created at this location as well. This is the world's first liquid hydrogen carrier that was launched last year in Japan, so it got a tremendous amount of press and worldwide attention. It's been undergoing through sea trials, and it's looking like it'll be in Australian waters in about April of next year. So it's a very high profile, a very cutting edge technology. As I mentioned, it's minus 253 degrees centigrade, so quite important and unique ways to keep the hydrogen cool on its transport to Japan. And in Japan itself, in Kobe, here is the offloading facility. Once again, it's been built, it's ready to receive hydrogen, and there's been no issues there. I guess with COVID, there's been some challenges across finishing the supply chain, but they are actually ready to receive the hydrogen. Got a couple of slides left. So this is really about where we're up to and where we're hoping to go in the future. So we're in the operations stage at the moment. At the same time, we're looking at commercial pathways, looking at undertaking additional techno-economic analysis before we head into FEED and obviously the construction and operations, which at the moment we target about 2030, but ultimately that will depend on off-takers prepared to pay the price for clean hydrogen. The second question, you may recall that I said there were two main questions we get asked. The second question, or in fact it's often statements, usually around carbon capture and storage. So the statements are that it doesn't work and it's too expensive. So I'd like to perhaps talk about that very briefly in the final two slides. So as I mentioned, we would only go ahead in a full commercial scale operation if we had a carbon capture and storage facility, which we do. We like to say, or the evidence says, there's about 20 projects around the world, carbon capture and storage. The earliest have been around for about 45 years. There's 3 under construction at the moment and about 35 being in various forms of development. The largest carbon capture and storage site is in Western Australia at the Gorgon gas fields, which can take up to about 4 million tonnes of carbon per year. And countries like the UK are very supportive of carbon capture and storage as well. So they are actually implementing quite a program to take their carbon capture and storage from 0 tonnes per year up to 180 million tonnes per year. Our site, our partner would be CarbonNet, and CarbonNet is a federal and state government organisation which has been working on their carbon storage facility for more than 10 years. It's located very close to where we are, and that has some benefits. It's also regarded as one of the best in terms of scale, as well as its ability to quickly absorb the CO2, best carbon storage sites in the world. It can store about 31 gigatons using depleted oil and gas reserves. So for those who aren't familiar, it's basically reverse engineering, where we've been extracting out oil and gas. In this instance, we inject back into the existing geological formation. We just inject back in the CO2. And the reason why we talk about cost, the cost of CCS will be embedded in our hydrogen cost, and why we believe our hydrogen cost can be reduced even with carbon capture and storage is because the carbon capture, which is J-Power's responsibility, becomes a byproduct of gasifying the coal. So when we gasify coal, we get hydrogen, but we also get a high purity and high pressure and temperature CO2. So that form of capturing carbon is a lot cheaper than, say, a coal-fired power station, which is post-combustion. And the other part of it being relatively inexpensive in this location in Gippsland is that it is close to us. It's about 100 kilometres away. So the cost of transferring the CO2 and injecting it about 1 kilometre underground is quite inexpensive to other projects around the world. So no doubt there's a few questions. So I might end it there, Brace, and pass it across to you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Jeremy. You really showed us a great possibility of producing clean hydrogen by mining sector and export. And let me show my screen for you, and we still got some questions. We have 4 questions for you here, and the first is, what would you think? What would be the feasible ways to reduce the cost of the clean hydrogen?
Well, I think Attilio mentioned green hydrogen, so he mentioned how to reduce costs there, which I think is fundamentally the cost of electrolyzers need to come down, as well as the actual energy itself. For what we're doing, I think just technology just continues to develop. So the gasification of coal has been around, that technology has been around for 20 or 30 years. So, and that just continues to get better, more efficient and cheaper. Carbon capture and storage equally continues, that technology continues to get more efficient and therefore cheaper as time goes on. So in terms of cost of production, investment and scale, ultimately, if you can build at scale, the cost of clean hydrogen does reduce dramatically.
Okay, and the second is, what do you think is the biggest bottleneck, the big barrier in the hydrogen technology supply chain?
That's a good question. The biggest barrier is probably demand. We spend a lot of time talking about how to produce it. I'm sort of speaking from a clean hydrogen, and the rest of you are speaking from a green hydrogen. So, there's always this great debate, takes up a lot of our own energy, pardon the pun, talking about which is best. But in actual fact, we won't be producing anything unless there's a huge demand for it. So I think we've got lots of work to go on building up demand, whether that be for power stations, to either mix with fossil fuel or coal, whether it be using ammonia or liquefied hydrogen in power stations, and then steel production, as well as, of course, transportation and those things. So a lot of technology and effort needs to go into the technology for the demand side as well.
Okay, thank you. And some audience ask about the question is, how about other J-Power's energy transition projects being developed?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned at the start, so we're already 50% renewable in Japan, and the bulk of that is hydro, pumped hydro. We have some wind. I think we're the second largest wind producer in Japan. And around the world, we've invested in biomass projects, wind, solar, and as well as we've got here in hydrogen. So And we see where the world is going. We need large amounts of clean and affordable energy. And so we're sort of pragmatic about this. At the end of the day, someone needs to buy this clean energy at a price which they can afford to pay. And that's the reality. So we are just continuing to look around for great clean energy projects which we can invest in. And there was a recent investment up in Queensland here in Australia, GenX Power, which is involved in a wind and hydro and solar project in Queensland. So we've recently invested in that as well.
Okay, thank you. And due to the time, we have to select one question from the Q&A box. More than people put out their question out, and we will choose one for you from the Matthew Cooper. And his question is, given the requirement for the CCS in the project, how does the additional caps exclusion affect the ROI of the project? And how does the storage of the carbon dioxide long term play into the project financing modes?
Well, I didn't hear the last part of your question, but I think I heard something about is a long-term storage. Are we confident about long-term storage? I think is what I heard you say. So just quickly, so the carbon, so J Power would undertake the carbon capture, and then at our gate of production, the CO2 is put into CarbonNet's pipeline, where they take it 100 kilometres to the port to the Bass Strait, where all these depleted oil and gas reserves are, these empty oil and gas reserves are, which are basically underground formations, and that will be pumped in there. In terms of our confidence, well, as I mentioned before, this has been around for 45 years, which is a reasonable length of time. And we're basically putting it into a rock formation, a geological formation, which has been safely storing oil and gas for millions of years. So we're not recreating anything, we're using what exists in terms of the rock formation, providing us a great amount of confidence that that can also equally store the CO2 for millions of years as well. I think that was the answer to your question.
Okay, and there was another one from the Leslie Jill, and she asked about how does the J Power plan to incorporate hydrogen into its energy production infrastructure?
Yeah, good question. So you may have been aware, people online, that the Prime Minister of Japan recently announced net zero by 2050. So all the organisations are busy looking at their transition plans as to how to achieve that. And J Power is one of those organisations having to relook at their transition plans. And obviously we have existing fossil fuel power stations in Japan. So at some point we're going to have to transition to cleaner forms of production. So whether or not that's using ammonia or pure hydrogen or some sort of mix, and what we do along the process as we transition is all yet to be determined on a year-by-year basis. But clearly, we need to do something, as do the other energy generators in Japan. Hence, also why J Power is interested in this project, because this could provide those forms of clean energy, whether it be as liquid hydrogen or even as ammonia. They will provide part of the supply chain to a company like Japan. To a company like J Power in Japan.
Okay, and it's very perfect presentation and a Q&A session, and Jeremy, I guess you see there's many questions in our Q&A box and the chat box, and if you have the time, you can you can answer the questions as well, and we have to carry on.
Yeah, I'll do that now. I'll mute myself and get off, and I'll answer those Q&As, Brace.
Okay, thank you very much. And let's get to the next and our last speaker. And after an overview of the mining sector, let's turn the page to the gas network. there's many hydrogen utilities in these sectors. With our last keynote, Renewable Hydrogen Hub in South Australia, and presented by the Vikram Singh, and who is a lead advisor low carbon transformation from the Australian Gas Infrastructure Group. Hi, Vikram.
Hi, Bryce. How are you doing? Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can hear you. Perfect.
Excellent, excellent.
And
Can I share my screen?
Yes, you can share it.
Excellent. I will now share my screen. So let me know if you are able to see my screen now.
Yes, it's perfect. It's full screen.
Excellent. Hello, everyone. I will be, as Bryce mentioned, presenting the deployment of renewable hydrogen to decarbonize gas networks. I begin my slide by just giving a brief overview of the Australian Gas Infrastructure Group. We're a large gas infrastructure business in Australia with gas distribution networks in Victoria, South Australia, regional New South Wales, Queensland, and large gas transmission assets, the Dampier to Bunbury pipeline in Western Australia, and significant gas storages as well. So we are a gas infrastructure group with operations throughout Australia, from Tasmania. We operate in all states. And of course, as we look towards a decarbonized future, with the world moving towards net zero by 2050 or earlier, we are developing our strategies to decarbonize our gas networks. So it's not only the Australian Gas Infrastructure Group, but we are joined in our decarbonization journey by all the other gas distribution businesses in Australia. And collectively, we have developed the Gas Vision 2050 document and strategy. What this is, it is basically a pathway and a plan to decarbonize our gas networks by moving to 100% hydrogen networks with some biogas over the next 10 to 20 years, with a view to becoming and playing an important role in net zero by 2050. There is some plan to our strategy. The plan was in this current 5-year period, which commenced 2017, we wanted to commence with demonstration projects and start blending a bit of hydrogen and biogas into our gas networks. And then over the next 5 to 10 years, really scaling it up and moving from 1 megawatt to 10 to 50 megawatt and 100 megawatt scale. And then over the next 10 to 20 years, and certainly by 2050, convert all our gas networks from carrying currently some methane to largely hydrogen. So that's the plan. We are on track. In fact, we are slightly ahead of schedule with several demonstration projects underway. From an AGIG perspective, we are certainly the leaders in Australia in terms of deploying demonstration projects and are currently scaling up as well. As you can see in this slide, starting from Western Australia, we're doing feasibility analysis in terms of storing large amounts of hydrogen up north, WA. We are doing a feasibility study on a transmission pipeline. And in South Australia, we're developing a project. In Victoria, we're developing projects in Queensland, and also collaborating with several governments and industry players through our Australian Hydrogen Centre. So we're very active right across Australia. I'll share with you some of the details on our key project. The first one, which really kick-started our journey, was Hydrogen Park South Australia, or HypeSA. This was a $12 million project with around $5 million support from the South Australian government. It's a 1.25 megawatt electrolyzer, and the aim really is to start blending 5% renewable hydrogen into a part of our gas distribution network in Adelaide. The way we've done it is we've isolated a suburb, and over about 700 homes will start receiving 5% renewable hydrogen by January, February of next year. The facility is up and running. The construction is complete. We achieved first production in late November in 2020, and we will finalize our commissioning at late January, with commercial operations really starting in February 2021. We have also got a contract with BOC to supply industry via tube and trailer, and we are considering refueling as well. So it's quite a significant project, with small scale blending into a public network. And you can see your pictures there in terms of the electrolyzer being installed and all the other balance of plant items. This shows the project location. It is located near the old Mitsubishi assembly building, which has been converted into the Tonsley Innovation District, where several renewable energy projects are being deployed and developed. And you can see on the left-hand side an aerial shot of the old Mitsubishi assembly building being redeveloped. The yellow oval is where our plant is located, and the blue is the blended gas pipeline going into the suburb of Mitchell Park. And on the right-hand side, in the dark blue sort of shaded area, is the area of Mitchell Park suburb, which we have isolated, where customers will start receiving 5% hydrogen blended gas early next year. It was a very significant project, the first sort of renewable hydrogen production facility getting into a public network in Australia. We started our feed in 2018, and I won't take you through all the stages of the project, but I will highlight the part on engagement. We undertook extensive customer engagement to ensure that we had support right across, not only from regulators and stakeholders to the wider community as well. And this has really been quite a big learning for us in terms of the benefit of early engagement with key stakeholders, including the local community that would start receiving 5% blended hydrogen. And it's really been very positive, and everyone's been very supportive. We have developed an extensive website, and the link is displayed here. So I would encourage everyone, if they're really interested in the extensive engagement program and the information and the feedback sessions we've had with community groups, to go and visit the website. There's some really useful material on that website. We've also developed the Australian Hydrogen Centre. This has been backed by ARENA, the Victorian SA governments, and industry partners. So we have got NEON, AusNet and ONG, and ourselves and industry partners, and the Victorian and the South and the SA governments as partners as well. And in this centre, we're doing 3 key projects. The first one is we're doing feasibility studies to blend 10% hydrogen into selected regional towns in Victoria and South Australia. Then we will do detailed feasibility studies to blend 10% renewable hydrogen into the gas networks of Victoria and South Australia. And the third feasibility looks at really converting these networks to 100% hydrogen networks. So that work is well and truly underway, with the regional town feasibility studies completed in March, and the 10% and the 100% feasibility studies draft reports would be would be developed by the middle of next year, with final towards the end of next year. So that is quite a significant undertaking, and will lay the blueprint for large-scale deployment of renewable hydrogen facilities to start really scaling up the decarbonization of gas networks. We are also developing another project in Gladstone, which is a regional center in Queensland, where we are putting a small electrolyzer and injecting up to 10% renewable hydrogen to the entire city network of Gladstone. So from high per se, where we had 5% to 700 customers, which are mainly residential, we're going up to 10% to us entire city network of Gladstone. So we are so that's our scale-up plan. The construction has not started for Hype Gladstone, but will start very shortly. We have placed the order for the electrolyzer and the long lead items, and we are hoping that we will be online at Hype Gladstone by the end of 2022. We're also developing projects that really move us from 1 or 2 megawatt to a 10 megawatt scale, and we are developing 2 projects. The first one is Hydrogen Park Murray Valley. This is we are developing it in partnership with ONG, and this is a 10 megawatt electrolyzer. It's around a $40 million project, where we will produce renewable hydrogen and blend up to 10% into the city networks of Albury and Wodonga. First production is targeted in 2023. It's co-located with Northeast Water's wastewater treatment facility, and there are some strategic benefits of co-locating electrolysis with the wastewater treatment facilities in terms of sharing infrastructure and potentially an oxygen offtake to the wastewater treatment facility as well. The second one is the Clean Energy Innovation Park, where we are partnering with ATCO. Once again, it's a $40 million project, a 10 megawatt electrolyzer, injecting into the ATCO gas distribution network through our transmission system. Once again, the first production is targeted at 2023. Both these projects have been shortlisted by ARENA as one of the 7 projects which are competing for funds under the $70 million Hydrogen Development Fund being administered by ARENA. Both projects' full applications are due the 20th of January next year. Just touching just a bit more information around Hydrogen Park Murray Valley. It is, as I said, it's a $40 million project co-located at the Wodonga wastewater treatment plant. We will be blending. This is going to be this is a scale project where 10% renewable hydrogen will be blended to around 80,000 customers in New South Wales and Victoria. So a very significant project, which has been shortlisted by ARENA for further funding. The location is very strategic as well. It's located right smack bang, very close to the Hume Highway, which is a major heavy haulage route between Sydney and Melbourne. So it's ideally placed for supporting mobility as well, and also close to large industrial customers. And we are working with them to deploy hydrogen applications such as forklifts as well. Bit of a schematic of how the project is sort of displayed. There's renewable electricity through renewable energy contracts. It's a 10 megawatt electrolyzer, oxygen as a byproduct of the electrolysis. We are working with Northeast Water at the wastewater treatment facility to deploy some oxygen there, water from the wastewater treatment plant, renewable hydrogen, blended into the Albury-Wodonga network, and there are significant opportunities to expand the facility to cater for mobility and other industrial applications. We are very well located, and that is exactly the reason why we chose Hydrogen Park Murray Valley, located at Wodonga. through our projects and through our journey, which is now we're into this journey. It's been 3 years, and we have learned lots of lessons. The first one, which is very encouraging, is that customers, all our customers, expect us to develop low carbon options, and they are receptive to future fuels and willing to pay a small premium for them. So that is very encouraging. We have been encouraged with all the results of a focus group and customer interactions. The other thing which is important to note, that networks are hydrogen ready. In terms of all our distribution networks are polyethylene. They can take large amounts of hydrogen. There is some cast iron there, but we are undertaking a program to replace our cast iron mains by polyethylene, and we should be fully we should have fully replaced our cast iron by 2035. But by and large, networks are ready or will be ready to take large quantities of hydrogen. Safety is obviously non-negotiable. We are working with customers, not only with customers, with key safety regulators to ensure that when we do blend hydrogen and large quantities of hydrogen, we ensure that all our asset management policies and maintenance practices take the blended gas into account. The other more important thing when it comes to powering these electrolyzers with renewable energy PPAs, we have learned a lot in terms of how we use the flexibility of the electrolyzers with PPAs to lower electricity cost while not sacrificing a capacity factor too much. And we're also exploring the co-location benefits of locating these large-scale electrolysis with the wastewater treatment plant. So there are some lessons being learned, and it all helps to lower the cost of renewable hydrogen production. Secondary markets are also important to us. Oxygen is important, and hydrogen for industry and refueling also present a sort of a medium-term opportunity, which fit very well with gas blending, given the flexibility we have in terms of blending hydrogen into our gas networks. And of course, the Australian government has targeted hydrogen under $2 by 2030. And through our learnings and through our market sounding and through working with manufacturers and renewable energy companies, we believe that that's certainly achievable by 2030. And in fact, we're already seeing significant cost reductions when it comes to plant and equipment, and also a lot of benefits by integrating it with flexible PPAs and other industrial applications for hydrogen. So what's next? Our plan is to have 10% renewable hydrogen across the networks. And this is a bit of a mud map of how this could play out in Victoria and South Australia. I won't take you through all the details here, but in the first 4 or 5 years, starting 2020 to 2023, 2024, we're deploying sort of smaller scale projects, and the larger scale projects like Murray Valley and Port Adelaide really come online 2023, 2024. By that time, we would have finished our detailed feasibility studies to put 10% hydrogen into South Australia and Victoria, and we will start deploying that at scale from 2024 onwards, with a plan to deploy more than 500 megawatts of electrolysis by 2030, thereby achieving our objective of putting 10% renewable hydrogen into our gas networks in Victoria and in South Australia. That's all I had by way of presentation, and we have hydrogen barbecues, which we deploy quite regularly in functions and events, both in Adelaide, in Victoria, in Melbourne, and in Queensland, and in Perth. And post COVID-19, when we do have these seminars at conference events, we're more than happy to wheel out a hydrogen barbecue and invite everyone to our next hydrogen barbecue, hopefully in the not too distant future. I'll end my presentation here. I've got my email address here if everyone wants to send me an email question either today or later on. Please feel free to do so, and I will provide you answers as soon as I can. With that, I will end my presentation. Back to you, Brace.
Hi, Vikram. Thank you for your valuable presentation, and you really showed us a great layout of AGIG's green hydrogen layout and what actions could be adopted by the gas sector. And here we got about 4 questions for you, and 2 from our, the Q&A session, and 2
Sure.
from our audience. I will show you. Let me share my screen. Here. And even the 3, I will choose 2 for you. And the first is, what could be the feasible ways to reduce the cost of the green hydrogen?
Yes, that's a question I think which has been answered by Attilio and by Jeremy as well. Really, the key comes to the cost of deploying large-scale electrolyzers and also the cost of renewable energy. So the first thing we are seeing is that as we scale up to deploy larger scale electrolysis, we believe that there is the opportunity to really go down the cost curve. And we are seeing, cost of electrolyzers halving or even achieving more cost savings as you move from, a 5-10 megawatt scale electrolyzer to about 50 or 100 megawatt electrolyzer. So that's scaling up of electrolyzers. And of course is we know that the cost of renewable power keeps coming down, right? So it's a matter of really using the flexibility of the electrolyzer and leveraging the flexible low cost power results in quite an innovative way to lower the cost of production. So with the lowering the cost of production and the lowering the cost of the electrolyzer due to scale, that is the best way to reduce the cost of green hydrogen. And also on-site solar and linking it with on-site solar is quite a good way to reduce the cost of green hydrogen, especially when solar is predicted to decline a lot more over the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay, thank you. And the second one is, how we secure the safe method to use blending hydrogen gas.
Oh yeah, that's a very important question, and safety is paramount to us. And people, most people have forgotten that in the 50s and the 60s, we were all running on Towns gas, which was 50 to 60% hydrogen. In fact, I think Hong Kong and I know Singapore still run on Towns gas in their distribution networks. So we have done this before, and it's a matter of I think educating the regulators and educating the customers and taking the concerns seriously to ensure that people are aware that this has been done before, so it's not something new, and secondly, to change our practices to reflect the different molecule which is being transported in our gas, and also to work with the end users and appliance manufacturers to provide confidence that at small blends appliances are fine, and as we move to higher blends, we understand and we do a whole lot of appliance testing and work with end users to ensure that safety is maintained.
Okay, thank you. And the third question we choose from our audience is named Don Parker. He asked a question about that in regard to safety considerations, does AGIG review all possible domestic equipment that will be using the gas Do different uses has different blend limits?
Yes, that is a very good question. For our HYPE SA project and for our Gladstone project, and in fact for all the other projects, what we've done is we've undertaken significant appliance testing, where we have tested most, if not all, types of appliances used at home, and tested them with 5 and 10% blend of hydrogen gas. So there is significant work which we've undertaken in terms of appliance testing to see what the safe blend limits are when it comes to using your cookers and heaters at home. So it's a matter of testing appliances with blended gas. We've also been working quite extensively with the Future Fuels Cooperative Research Center, which has been established in Australia to undertake the impacts of moving from natural gas to hydrogen and their impact on appliances and networks. So it comes down to testing, it comes down to analysis, and it comes down to working with customers and regulators to ensure confidence that when we move from natural gas to hydrogen, safety is not compromised. There was one question which popped up: why did we move from town's gas to natural gas? Well, it's an interesting question. We moved from town's gas to natural gas because previously in the 50s, 60s, town gas was made from coal. So we moved from town's gas to natural gas because there was benefits in terms of air quality and emissions. And now we're moving from natural gas to renewable hydrogen to take that journey one step forward to completely decarbonize.
Okay, Vikram, and there was a last question for you. It comes from Ian Jiang, and he asked, "Hi, Vikram. Do you see any APAC countries like Japan, South Korea, China, Australia, and so on? It's financially feasible to develop a utility scale renewables projects like solar and wind locally to produce hydrogen at scale, or just to power certain chemical manufacturer facilities?"
Yes, absolutely. For example, I think Australia is really well placed, right, to leverage its significant renewable energy resources like solar and wind to produce renewable hydrogen, in China as well, and India as well. So wherever you have good renewable energy resources, it is a really good opportunity to make renewable hydrogen at scale to not only decarbonize gas usage, but also transport and move to things like ammonia and green steel and green cement. So I think that's the good thing about hydrogen, renewable hydrogen. It has broad applications to decarbonize not only gas consumption, but transport and industrial applications as well.
Okay, thank you, Vikram. Thank you for your really valuable sharing and your presentation, your Q&A session. And if anybody has still questions, and please contact our advisor Vikram Singh directly. And thank you so much, Vikram.
No problem. It's a pleasure, and I'll try to answer all the questions in the chat. But please email me if I don't get to you directly.
Oh yes, thank you so much. And okay, now let's turn to the next step. And actually, we will finish all the sessions today by a deep understanding of the hydrogen application in green ammonia, clean hydrogen production and export, and the green hydrogen gas sector. And thanks to all our speakers, valuable speeches, and patient standby. Hope you would have enjoyed this sharing process, and also thanks to all of our attendees for staying us till the end. And at the end, we will have an important announcement about our next year's physical event. in Australia about a new date. Um, because over the past few months, our all production teams have been monitoring the worldwide developments related to the COVID-19 and considering many countries and regions recommending self quarantine and many institutions strongly advising the business developer to restrict travel. And we know it is no longer practical and or ethical to hold a party as the schedule for the first quarter of the next year, especially in the view of the number of the participants. And therefore, I'm here to officially announced to you the representing the leader associates that all our Australian events involving the conference and exhibitions will be moved from the March 23 to 24 to the new date July 19 and to 20 2021. And our three events, including the Connecting Green Hydrogen APAC 2021, Australian Wind Energy 2021, and especially the annual, uh, annual Solar Energy Future Australia 2021, which formerly known as the Australia Solar and Energy Storage, and come with the brand new additions conjunction with solar operations and asset management 2021, and 100% renewables Australia 2021 would be postponed to the July 19 to 20. But we will still held at Pullman Mobile, Melbourne Albert Park, and also we are the same. We're still at the same revenue. And frankly, the postponement decision is very hard. It's very hard for us to make because we have to put most efforts into this greeting gathering in Melbourne and wishes to host it as scheduled. And however, to secure the healthy safety and a remarkable event experience for all our canned clients and workers, we believe moving to the July is a more suitable and responsible choice for most of our attendees. And the middle July is most possible date for both the local attendees and international attendees to connect with in Melbourne without concerns of the travel restriction. And and at last, many thanks again for the continuous support from our sponsors and guest speakers, delegates, all the people who are standing with us during this special period. And please kind of find the relevant terms and options, and we will reach you with emails, phones, and other links, whatever recently in succession. And with the aim of accelerating the green hydrogen, more and more digital contact will be created by the leader associates to keep enabling the business networking and the insights sharing. And last but not least, I would like to give the big thanks again to all our audience who have spent 1 hour staying with us and in front of the screen and cameras. Hope all of you enjoy the upcoming New Year and Merry Christmas. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.